half a day and a day's worth, depending on if it was a good or a bad day. This was spread over 3 weeks, and at the end of that 3 weeks, gone, a memory.
Yeah.
And for us, that was like a get-out-of-jail-free card, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
By the time we got back to the USA, he then went and made friends with all the kids in the neighborhood, and he's just a different kid. Now, he's still autistic, so I'm not talking about a miracle cure here. I do think there's a difference in healing and cure. He came back without these 3 key dysfunctions, and those dysfunctions were so impairing his quality of life and ours that the removal of them allowed him to be this boy who was still autistic but so functional within his autism that the autism now comes across much more as kind of a personality quirk than a disorder, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he rides independently. He's 2 grades ahead academically. It's extraordinary. And we now run an autism and riding kind of learning place in Central Texas where we live called the New Trails Center. And you can find it if you go to www.horseboyfoundation.org, horseboyfoundation.org. And we do it all by donation. There are no charges for what we do. And we see time and again the kids and families having their situation not cured but ameliorated through working with these horses and being in nature and having time for their overtaxed neurology to calm down. We don't have access to shamans there, and obviously that's a touchy subject for many people. People are skeptical. They should be skeptical. One ought to be skeptical of one's doctor, one's lawyer, oneself, one's bank, as we now know. You know, but that skepticism should not sort of trap you into a position where you can't ever try anything new.
No.
So it's that thing where you have to kind of feel your way. But I do definitely expect people to feel a little skeptical about this story. All I can say is it worked for us, you know.
But it's an amazing journey, isn't it? I mean, it's about being open to possibilities and not boxing yourself into what, you know, just the normal paradigm of you have to take pills, you have to put kids on drugs and stuff like that. I mean, what is the harm of being out in nature? And
exactly.
These guys, you know, they've been living on the earth, being
for a long time,
being very in tune with everything, haven't they?
That's right. Well, it's more than that. They're very, very practical people. If something doesn't work, they don't do it. Because if you can imagine, it's one thing to feel skeptical from a living room in London, but it's an entirely another thing to live in the Kalahari Desert or on top of a 12,000-foot mountain in Siberia. You cannot afford, if you live in those places, to waste your time with what we would call New Age. You know, I mean, it's the antithesis of New Age. It's so old age that it's tried and tested. If these systems of medicine did not work for these people, they'd all be dead because they get sick, they go mad, they have problems, just like the rest of us. And if they can use Western medicine, they absolutely will. They don't think Western medicine's a bad thing at all. It's just that it's not normally there. So what do they do in the interim? Fortunately for them, they have evolved systems over many thousands of years that are very practical for them. It would be arrogant of us to think that these people have nothing to teach us, because if we found ourselves, you know, naked and on foot in that part of the world, we'd absolutely need those people to show us how to survive, and they would do it. You know, they're very hospitable people too. The other thing there is that they're not people who can afford to waste human resources. If somebody can do something, they do something. And the idea of someone being a sick person is very cultural. I didn't realize this until I started working with other cultures, but in a culture like the Bushmen or, say, for example, the Duka, the reindeer herders, is a sick person, or are they regarded as a different kind of person who will have a different role in society? One of the things that you often notice about shamans and traditional healers and medicine men and so on is that they often exhibit a sort of constellation of symptoms that are neuropsychiatric. So you might meet one shaman who comes across as sort of schizophrenic. You might meet another shaman, I know one very well, in Botswana called Besa, who comes across very much as an adult autist. I've never had a proper conversation with Besa. He won't look me in the eye, he talks in riddles. I've known him for 15 years.
Yeah.
And these people have pivotal roles in their society. They have families, they're not marginalized. It's almost as if their condition, if you like, is regarded as a qualification for a certain job or role, rather than a disqualification from participating in society. And I think we have something to learn there.
Yeah, it's kind of honouring that everybody's got a gift and a role to play in society.
Exactly.
And I think in the West, it's almost like we've institutionalised these kind of people over the years, and the ones that have kind of broken through have become the mad scientists, almost.
Yeah.
And it's almost like these people, if you nurture them in the right way, each and every single one of them have got a gift to offer the world, because their brains work in a completely different way to us. So it's not a disability, it's like just a different way of being, isn't it?
And we've got people like this within our culture. You know, I mean, look at Dr. Temple Grandin, for example. Are you familiar with her work?
Absolutely fascinated by her mind and her thinking in pictures, yeah.
Exactly, and she's very autistic. I mean, when you go and meet her, we were lucky we got to interview her, you know, at length, and not only is she upfront about her autism, she has a kind of sort of interview persona, but when you meet her just sort of in her downtime, she stims.
Right,
she
flappy.
flaps. She admits that she lives on antidepressants. But she says, but I also have these gifts. I have this great clarity of thought. I don't suffer psychologically in the way that neurotypical humans do. I don't worry what other people think about me. I don't compare myself to other people. I don't have these psychological problems that being a neurotypical person has. There are many gifts associated with it. She's just one example. I mean, fortunately for us, there's many people now writing about autism from the inside. Daniel Tammett's another example, you know, and fortunately more of them are coming through. But now that we're facing it kind of as a pandemic, and we've got 1 in 150 people being diagnosed with this, what are we going to do? Institutionalize everybody? No. And it's going to be very interesting to see what shifts our society makes.
Yeah.
You know, because it's going to have to. With that number, it's going to have to.
I absolutely agree with you there, totally. Have you ever heard of... this is probably a bit out of the box here, but there's some channelers called Esther Hicks and... what's the other one? And they channel a being called...
Have you heard of that? Yeah. I have, absolutely.
And they did a Q&A session about autism. And Abraham came through to this whole audience of parents and... healthcare specialists, I guess, people that work with kids but don't tell their peers they've come to this kind of conference. But anyhow, Abraham said that because these kids are unsocializable, that you cannot change them or mould them, then society will have to change. With us, because we've got an ego, we're very self-conscious. We kind of conform, don't we, to the status quo. Well, these kids won't. So society has to change, and I thought that was amazing because it's so tangible and so real, and I see that every day. So
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it almost doesn't matter whether you're saying, oh, I got it through channeling, or I got it through science, or I got it through this, or I got it through that. There is this fact. There's an awful lot of them. What's going to happen? And I cannot but believe that it will bring us to a better place, because if we are adjusting to people who are without ego, surely that has to be a good thing for our society, because most of our ills, we know, come through the ego and the psychological brouhaha that causes in the human brain. The amazing thing that I find now working with these kids in Texas with the horses is I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller, so obviously I have a very highly developed ego, and I am the first to admit it, and I have a lot of trouble in my life making sure that my ego is a tool and not a liability. And every adult that I know who's neurotypical has the same story to tell in some way or other. But what is amazing is when I've been spending an afternoon with these kids and the horses, I realize that I have had a break from my ego for maybe some hours. Not because I went and spent 30 years on a mountain meditating, learning how to do that, but because the simple gift of being around these people who are not reflecting my own ego back at me, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
Means that I de facto get the gift of having a break from my own ego. Now, it doesn't mean that my ego doesn't kick right into gear as soon as I leave the place and I am straight back to dealing with all the old shit that, you know. But for that time, I do honestly get a break, and for that time, I'm a better person.
Yeah.
What if that were to start happening on a societal level? That's an interesting concept.
I think it is, and there's a lot of young children that are growing up around autistic kids, and you know, maybe they'll